Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, the one step to take today to eliminate financial stress. Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon and welcome to the Prudent Money Radio Show. I'm your host, Bob Brooks. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, if you got a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. You'll find a Q&A at the top of the page. Just hit the link, go to it, and send us your question and or your comments, and we'll get you taken care of. That's all at the website, www.prudentmoney.com. Well, last week we were talking about stress levels and retirement. You know, there's two big questions that most people want to know and want to make sure is handled. Are we on track or not? Maybe we're not on track. What do we have to do to get on track? Does that mean we have to change our goals? What does that process look like to make sure we are on track? So that's the first burning question. The second one is, will we run out of money? And that is a fear for most people when it comes right down to those who are even financially secured. In the back of their mind, they're wondering, will we run out of money? And, you know, being in the business for 30 plus years, I look at these two questions, and the irony is, yes, they cause a lot of stress by not knowing the information. But the process to get to the information, the process to get to the answers to the questions is really not that tough. Then there was one more conclusion that this Northwestern Mutual survey came to, that I see this all the time, is that women feel less financially secure. And actually I could change that and say the spouse who is not involved in the process feels less financially secure. And I see this all the time, is that one spouse, and it could be the husband or the wife, really takes care of the finances, takes care of the financial planning, and the other spouse doesn't want to get involved for a variety of reasons and doesn't feel the security of knowing and understanding that what they're doing based on their risk level, based on assumptions that are being made, has them on their way and on track to a secure financial retirement. But if you're not involved in the process, you don't have a say in the process, there's decisions being made that affect you, and as the spouse who's not involved in the process doesn't have a seat at the table, that's problematic. And of course there is a feeling of being less financially secure if you don't really know what the problems are and the solutions, of course. So that brings us back to where we are today. And with this one statistic that came from the Northwestern Mutual Survey, just 1 in 5 retirees have a formal written retirement plan. Just 1 in 5. Now, there's all kinds of surveys, and I got to tell you that they are pretty consistent. That the bottom line is a very low percentage of people in retirement, people 5, 10, 15, 20 years away from retirement, don't have a written plan. Because these questions that I've posed to you today are questions that are easy to answer. You figure out the numbers and the answers to the questions, which we'll talk about here in a second. You plug it into the software. The software gives you the answers. And as long as you've made correct types of assumptions, which are very important, and we'll talk about that here in a minute as well, then that gives you a kind of a framework and a guideline as to where you are and what it takes for you to get to your goals and to reach that ideal retirement that you kind of had in the back of your mind. I think that one of the problems one of the roadblocks comes down to the process. For instance, 1 in 5 retirees have a formal written retirement plan. Formal written retirement plan is something that I don't even think I want to be a part of. It sounds very taxing. It sounds very time intensive. A lot of questions, a lot of things we may not want to talk about. And it sounds probably expensive, lots of hours. And to me, a formal written retirement plan, or something that takes a lot of time, and the type of retirement plan that I'm talking about could be done in less than 30 minutes to an hour. And at the very basics of that, you could get enough to get an idea of where you are. Now, obviously, the more detailed we get, the better the numbers are, the better the plan is. But it just, one of the things that I've always felt like is that to do the most important things when it comes to money, you got to remove the roadblocks. Well, the plan itself I believe, has become one of the roadblocks. Now, I talk about how easy it is to go through the process and all that type of thing, but keep in mind, that doesn't mean that there's not financial baggage in a relationship. Does not mean that there are financial disagreements. And those, I believe, of course, those will create the why to the question, why aren't people planning? Because they don't want to get in arguments. They don't want to dig up hard discussions. They don't want to have the tough discussions, that kind of thing. So the emotional aspect and where a couple are financially in their own minds is a tough one. And I'm not denying that, because that is a big percentage of why people don't. It's kind of one of those things. We'll get to it later. We'll make the plan later. We'll definitely put that on our list, our checklist, so we can check that box later. And in working with people, that's what I've found to be the case, is that when it comes right down to it, any excuse to get out of it, any excuse to push it down the road, is an excuse that I might take. So as I said earlier, this is what you're looking for as far as numbers go that will help you get to those retirement goals. Number one, the goals themselves. Monthly cash flow needed. Now, what do I mean by monthly cash flow? That simply means if you were retiring today, how much would it take for you to live off of? Forget about taxes, forget about inflation. Just talk about today, what's that number come out to? And what I like to do is I like to look at it, the ideal retirement, so the ideal cash flow, down to the just getting by, but a retirement cash flow without all the bells and the whistles, where you got to remember why you're retiring to begin with. And I mean, obviously people have different reasons for it, but I think that you're retiring, and this is my look at it and my overall answer for it. You're retiring because you want freedom. You value freedom, and that freedom means a lot of different things to you. I was talking to someone last year or so, and we were talking about what was the most important thing to them about retiring, and the husband, who traveled all the time, said, I want to give my wife back the time that I stole from her with my career. And I thought that was so cool. I said, what a driver. And he said, that doesn't mean taking trips all the time, doing things, spending money. That just means having the ability to be together and having enough money to do that. That's the kind of answer that you want. And I think that comes down to financial freedom. One of the things I've always talked about retirement is retirement. If I could change that word to a different way to describe what we do later on in life is financial independence. That's what you're trying to achieve, isn't it? You're trying to achieve the day that you can make a choice between earning an income and being paid. Earning an income and creating that income for yourself without a job. So it's a choice, right? I mean, we make that choice every day that we go to work. And for people who are 30 years away from retirement, they're probably not going to have the kind of assets and resources that they can depend on their own financial well-being to cover expenses. They can't retire. They're not financially independent. Then there's people who've hit it big. They could be in their 40s. They could retire tomorrow. They could declare financial independence today, but they choose to be involved in projects that could create income and could create more wealth for their family. So it's at the point that you get to where you're financially independent, you can say, I choose to work because I want to, or I choose not to work because I want to. And that is a powerful place to be. I think that financial independence, to me, that is a more powerful goal than retirement. Because I always looked at that point that you become financially independent, that point that you become the situation where you don't have to depend on a job to earn an income. That is the place that you want to be. Hey, this is Bob Brooks. You are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Hey, stick around. We are up against a break, and we'll be right back.
The Word for Today is excited to announce the new official online home for the ministry of Pastor Chuck Smith and Kay Smith, pastorchuck.org. At pastorchuck.org, you'll have instant access to thousands of hours of verse-by-verse teaching by Pastor Chuck Smith from Genesis through Revelation, and full access to special messages on subjects such as prophecy and much, much more. Also at pastorchuck.org, a full library of great teachings by Kay Smith, and a section where you can read some of Pastor Chuck's books online, all free of charge. So visit the new official online home of the Word for Today and the ministry of Pastor Chuck and Kay Smith, pastorchuck.org.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson with the Point of View Radio Talk Show. I want to invite you to listen to our program on KDKR from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock p.m. Monday through Friday. We look at various issues from a biblical perspective. Our topics range from politics and economics to the Bible, theology, and apologetics. We also bring authors and informed experts to the program. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. Hope you'll join us every day on Point of View right here on Bible School Radio 91.3.
The Alps of the New Testament. That's how scholars have described the book of Ephesians. This week on Through the Bible, we set off for a journey through the high peaks of the Apostle Paul's letter to the church at Ephesus. Why don't you join us as we find out what it means to be a Christian and a church, both in faith and practice.
Listen daily, 6:30 p.m. on Bible School Radio 91.3.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. We were talking about that right before the break, snuck up on us. We're talking about financial independence. The day that you achieve financial independence and financial freedom is the day that you declare whether or not you're working by choice because you don't need the income, or you're not working. And it's a great place to be. It's pure 100% financial freedom. And I think that as Christians, this is a huge place to get to in our lives, because think about it. You've never been freer than when you're at a place of financial independence to serve God. You spent all these years and these decades leading up to this point to where you were a good steward with your money. You saved, you planned, you accumulated enough to declare financial independence or retire, and now You are free to do whatever you want to because you're not dependent on a company or a business to pay you any income. And it's the ultimate in freedom, the absolute ultimate in freedom. And that is you've never been that free to serve, ever. I mean, what a powerful place to get to. That's the way I always looked at it. And the want to be 100%, not just only committed, but be 100% in God's calling for your life. Tell me another time that we've ever been there, because you had financial responsibilities. You had to make sure your family was taken care of. You had to make sure that you were saving enough, staying out of debt, making money work, being a good steward. Now all that has fallen into place and is rewarding you and your family by creating the freedom that you've been working so hard for, to be free to serve however God would have you serve. Man, that's a powerful, powerful place to be. Sorry, I got a little off course. Let me gently guide us back down to the road we were going down. So what is that expense level that you're going to need to cover? And you might, you look at things like, well, you got to ask yourself some questions. Are we going to have debt? Is the house going to be paid off? It's coming up with a spending plan, including things as spending money on Christmas, spending money on birthdays, those once-a-year fees for insurance, for property taxes, you name it. That you get everything down that will be there at retirement or financial independence, and you are that's what you're shooting for. Now, once again, don't worry about inflation and all that. Act as if it is today. How long do you want those expenses to pay out? Do you want to make sure that you are prepared till age 90? Do you have longevity in your family? Or do you want to do it 85, 80? That's a personal question. It just depends on how long you want to cover the expenses. What's your current investments? What's the types of accounts? What's the balances of the accounts? What's the risk level? That definitely needs to be looked at, because that determines what kind of assumption you're going to make on average growth rate. If you're going to be, and even if you are, say you're moderately to a growth investor, I still would make sure that I kept the level of growth down to a minimal amount, so that, if I hit that and I'm saving this, then I'll be okay. It's much better, if you had the luxury to do this, to get to retirement or financial independence with way more than you need, or get there early, because you took very conservative goals and very conservative numbers. So keep that in mind. Of course, the risk level is so very important, to make sure that you're being true to yourself, being true to your relationship with your spouse, your family, and as a steward of what God has given to you, that you're being true to what God would have you choose as a risk level, that you're at peace with that risk level. Then, when you figured out that risk level, you gotta figure, okay, if I'm investing at this growth rate, what do I expect? Does that mean I've got to be able to accept a 10 to 15% loss at any given time? What does that look like? And a financial advisor can take you through that process and make sure you're comfortable with it. And then, what kind of strategy am I going to use to reduce risk? I often refer to that as Plan B investing. Then we need to know Social Security amounts at the various ages. Typically, you get that at 62, 65, 67, and 70. And then any annuity payouts, any pension payouts. Then you go and you plug all this in, you come out with an answer. And you may look at that answer and go, I can absolutely do that. That is doable. Or you may look at it and go, that's not doable. And so you start to shape, inform, reduce, increase the numbers until you're right before your very eyes. is a plan that is actionable and that you can follow and you can commit to. That is a great feeling, to get to that point to where you can do that. And just to know those answers to, I think it's one of those situations where if someone said to you today, why are you saving 5, 6, 7% of your income and doing that on a monthly basis? You should be able to say, and of course, I'm just making this up as an example, you should be able to say, I'm saving because at age 65, I want to retire. I want to have this kind of income. I want it to last this long. I plan on estimating an average growth rate of this, and that's all going to allow me to have financial independence, to choose to work whether I want to choosing it to whether to earn an income or not. And this is what I want to do, and this is where I feel led, or I'm trying to figure out where I feel led for to where God's leading me at this important time of freedom like I've never had before. That is a cool way to be able to answer that question. So give us some thought, because one of the things that we are doing at Prudent Money, we've developed a ministry resource called the 30-Minute Phone Call. And it is a no-cost way for you to determine if you're on track or not for retirement. I really wanted to do this, and so I'm rolling it out. And or we can talk about any other situation. One of the problems is the access to information, and it's smaller and smaller access, because, and I wrote about this on my website, is that the financial services business, the financial advisor business, is starting to put these high minimums in. To where if you don't have this kind of money, you can't be a client. You can't participate in our retirement strategies. And I've never believed in minimums. I believe that you've got to be able to provide a solution for everybody, and we can do that through this 30-minute phone call. All you have to do is go to prudentmoney.com for more information, and you can sign up for a time online. We set some 2 or 3 times out for every week, and as my schedule ebbs and flows, you can find something in there that's open. So that's at prudentmoney.com. Hey, I want to talk to you a little bit about John Upalo. You've heard him on the program. He's a college admissions expert, one of the sought-after speakers when it comes to college and everything that goes into college. And he talked to us last week. He comes on the program once a month. He talked about that the government is changing up the FAFSA form. And if you are planning to apply for financial aid for the 24-25 school year, you will be faced with some major challenges to the application and eligibility criteria. The Department of Education and colleges are still sorting out the implementation, which is not good, and leaves a lot of uncertainty, because this generally in October they roll out the new FAFSA form, you fill it out, and you see if you qualify for financial aid, which is extremely important. So he's doing a webinar tomorrow night with some other financial aid experts, and basically they're going to be focusing on how you can determine your eligibility for financial aid based on this brand new formula. What you should be doing now while you await the release of the FAFSA. Critical information about what it is being considered in their eligibility analysis. Folks, if you got a kid in college, you're depending on this financial aid, and you need to figure out some answers, you've got to go to this webinar. Not only that, it's free. And it's 7 o'clock Eastern. He's on the East Coast, so 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. You can go to my website, prudentmoney.com, and there will be a pop-up when you go to the site. You can register there, or you can go to mycollegecorner.com and sign up for it. I cannot stress to you how important this information is, and to make sure that you are making the right decisions when it comes to one of the greatest expenses that you want to make sure you can get all the aid possible that's offered. And all the changes they're doing, you know, maybe they mean well by changes. Why they do all these changes, who knows? But it, you know, they're going to roll it out by December. What could go wrong, right? So with John's information, you will be on top of things and know exactly what you should be considering. And he's also going to supply calculators that you can figure out about what your numbers are. I always say know your numbers, and your numbers will take care of themselves. So make sure that you do know your numbers. And that's tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Central Standard Times, mycollegecorner.com or prudentmoney.com for more information. Hey, this is Bob Brooks. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.
Prudent Money.